Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Very good. Welcome to Lunch with Books. My name is Sean. I'll be your host. You know what I always ask at this time? Thank you. I don't have to say it. In case you didn't hear it, silence your phone. Please. Thank you. Next week on June 2nd, it will be June. We will celebrate 100 years of the Mother Road, Route 66, with the Victor Samalot Duo. So it's a musical journey down a road that did not go through West Virginia ever. Then on June 9th at noon, Heavens to Betsy, with author Robert Long Foreman, who is from Wheeling originally, Ann Foreman's son. And he has written a humorous novella, let's call it. So today, to introduce our guest, I'm going to bring on our old friend, the Poet Laureate of West Virginia, Mark Harshman.
Thank you, Sean, very much. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I can never say enough about the Ohio County Public Library, the true gem of libraries in the whole state of West Virginia. And it's a real pleasure to be here in a role other than as poet. But as poet, Sean asked me to announce that I not forget that coming up on July 21st is the next edition of the Wheeling Poetry Series, and it's a very special one. We will have the Palestinian-American poet Zaina Assam, who I count as a friend and past Poet Laureate of Alexandria, Virginia, will be here to share her work with us, and I encourage you to come out. So, onward. What a pleasure to introduce my own priest. The Venerable, no less than, the Venerable Joshua Saxe has served as rector of St. Matthew's Episcopal Church here in Wheeling since 2022. Prior to serving at St. Matthew's, he had served at St. James Episcopal in Lewisburg and Trinity Episcopal in Parkersburg. Locally, he is now one of 4 clergy serving in the newly established chaplaincy corps of the Wheeling Fire Department. He has held various roles in the wider church, serving on the standing committee for the diocese, a rather thankless job. I think I can say that. The Peter...
You do a lot of sitting.
Yes, right. The Peterkin Board, helping to oversee our campus ministry. That's the church camp, if you will, for the Episcopal Church in West Virginia. He is the diocesan representative to the Province 3 Council and the Synod of the Episcopal Church USA. He has twice served as deputy to the General Convention, where he was appointed to the Committee on Creation Care. He currently serves as Archdeacon for Community Resilience and Disaster Response, as well as serving on the Canons and Constitution Committee of the Diocese. His serving on this one committee, the Community Resilience and Disaster Response, comes in part because during the horrific floods in Lewisburg several years ago, Father Josh really did do a marvelous job in helping people in their recovery. Father Josh is married to Canon Catherine Saxe. Together they are raising 2 daughters, Willa and Clara, who, hear this clearly because this says a lot about Father Josh as well, whose daughters love walks in the woods and splashing in streams. Please, a warm welcome for Father Joshua Saxe.
Thank you, Mark. So just a few words before I turn this over to show you a movie. The St. John's Bible has been in our possession since about mid-January. We were able to take advantage of a program from St. John's University called A Season with the St. John's Bible that allows congregations or institutions to utilize this resource for worship and faith formation education. And so we are actually nearing the end of our season with it. But here in a little while, I'll talk some about how we used it at St. Matthew's. So the format, again, a video that's about 20 minutes. And then I'm going to offer about 10 minutes of reflections, both highlighting some of what you will have heard in the video, as well as some of the things that we learned as docents when they came and taught us a little bit about the Bible as well. And then I'd like to make sure that we have plenty of time maybe about 15 minutes to come and actually view the St. John's Bible. I do have prints that we made for some of our formation opportunities as well. And so I think having folks kind of cycle through just a little bit, we can make sure that some of the prints do make it back around the room. Just a quick note though, and I'll say this again because it's really important, no drinks or food around the Bible. The prints, not as urgent to keep things away, but we do want to continue using those, and so if we can make sure that they stay clean and liquid-free or salad-free, that would help us out quite a bit. So, without further ado, I'm going to show you this video. It was produced by the BBC.
We are artists and explorers. We are liberators and survivors. We are fighting for peace and finding the cure. We're remembering the past and looking to the future. We are caring for each other, and we are proud. We are Western Washington. These are our stories, and this is your program. Drawing on a 1,500-year tradition of calligraphy and Bible-based learning, the Benedictine monks of St. John's Abbey have commissioned a handwritten illuminated Bible.
In the Middle Ages, all Bibles were handmade, handwritten, and not until the Gutenberg printing press do you start to have printed Bibles. And for a monastery or a cathedral to make a handwritten Bible was the greatest thing they could do in terms of expressing culture and civilization. Once the printing press came into being, we lost that tradition, and no one has really commissioned a book like this in nearly 500 years. So when we approached our own 150th anniversary as a monastery, and as we looked at the coming of the new millennium, we decided we wanted to do something that was out of our own tradition of appreciation for books, something that would be our gift to the world on our anniversary, and something that would also express the religious values of our particular time and place. What we decided to do was to create a handwritten, illuminated, meaning pictures, Bible, and a monumental Bible.
The term illumination refers to any manuscript in which the text is supplemented by images and decoration of gold and silver. The majority of surviving illuminated manuscripts are religious texts from the Middle Ages.
One reason why we would undertake a project like this is to inspire the human imagination. In our day and age, we have a multitude of problems and challenges that society faces. And why would you undertake to make a new Bible in the 21st century? You must feed the hungry. You must clothe the naked. You must give housing to the poor and the destitute. But you also have to feed their spirit. The poor, like the wealthy, thrive on music. They thrive on art. They thrive on inspiration. And we can't neglect that side of life. So you must do both. You can't do either or. If all you've done is provide clothing and housing and food for people, you've done nothing more than you do for your animals, your pets. But you have to tend to their spirit as well. And once in a while, you need to do something like this project to inspire people to look at the Bible in a totally different way. We commissioned a man named Donald Jackson to do this work.
He's perhaps the Western world's most renowned calligrapher. One of his titles is that he is scribe to Queen Elizabeth II in the House of Lords. And he's just this incredible artist and calligrapher.
It was his idea, actually. It was his vision, his lifetime's ambition to make a handwritten, illuminated Bible. And he approached us about 12 years ago with the idea. And we mulled it over for almost 2 years before we decided that we would do this. And then as the project materialized and moved forward, Donald assembled a group of scribes at his workshop in Wales.
The scale of this Bible is daunting. I believe it'll be about 1,000 pages, and each page is about 2 feet tall and 20 inches wide.
He wanted some diversity of art in here. He wanted other perspectives. And so he invited 6 people to make contributions to the art, to the illuminations on these pages. And each have made very distinctive contributions that are very different from what Donald might have come up with on his own.
I got a call from Donald, and he asked me to work on the project. He said that they came up with a way that multiple people could contribute illuminations, and in addition to the scribes that were doing the lettering. This project was quite unusual because of the idea that they were not only going to have a very diverse group of artists, each of whom had quite a distinct body of work, but to have those artists work without really interacting with each other. That Donald was going to be the central person that would at least come to most of the decisions about which work each person would get, and be the person that would also art direct in such a way that the pieces would all fit within this larger project.
The changing the cadence of the artist who illustrates which passage and where, the shift in styles, the shift in imagery, the shift in emphasis helps sort of bring to life, the passages that are being illustrated or illuminated, to use the old term. And that kind of shifting attention is one of the things that keeps the Bible kind of alive, lively, and sort of a page turner.
St. John's has assembled a committee of artists, medievalists, theologians, biblical scholars, and art historians who would advise the artists on what themes, stories, and theological underpinnings each illumination should communicate.
The first thing I get is called a brief, which is the written description from the CIT of what the historical content and the theological content of the illumination should portray. I do some reading and research. I also read commentaries that are written about those passages, so I get viewpoints, varying viewpoints, about what the idea and the concept of that piece is. I then do a paper sketch on a full-size computer printout of the page that I am sent from the scriptorium, and after that sketch, usually multiple sketches, are sent back to the scriptorium, and Donald Jackson has a chance to look at them. He gives me his directions, suggestions, support, cheers, various, ideas that he has about what I've done. The first assignments that I got was the Last Judgment and the Calming of the Storm. Both illuminations that have to do with two different sides of a situation. The Last Judgment being, the dark side as opposed to paradise, and the whole question of how to portray that was really vivid, because it's been done thousands of times by hundreds of artists. And I think imagining what that image might be without the information that I got from the CIT, the Committee on Illumination and Text, would have been mind-boggling. They gave some wonderful suggestions for possible references and very specific direction that the optimistic side, the side portraying paradise, should be noticeably larger than the dark side. And I thought that was an interesting direction, that the clarity with which they imagined this piece included something like the proportion of dark to light and the optimistic aspect of good and evil, right and wrong.
We asked Donald, first of all, to make a Bible that was contemporary in its design and themes, but we asked him to use the materials that were part and parcel of the great medieval Bibles: vellum, quill pen, the traditional inks, the gold leaf, that made these really tremendous works of art, but also enduring works of art.
The materials that were chosen are proven that they will last 1,000 years, that the vellum and the inks and the gold leaf, all of these techniques have survived in earlier documents to today. And so there's this nifty built-in, this is going to last forever component that a lot of contemporary art doesn't have. Donald Jackson and his team of scribes and illuminators looked backwards at these ancient texts in the British Library and other sources, these medieval and Renaissance documents that were handwritten. He's used those as a precedent for his project today.
Use of materials like vellum, hand-ground pigments, and gold and silver gilding offer these artists unique challenges, but also provide insights into how surviving ancient texts were created.
I have to staple down the skin onto a flat surface to keep it from rolling and distorting the vellum while the paint is being applied to it. So you hydrate it by hanging it in a very moist environment, and then stretch it down onto the vellum by with a staple gun. And the idea is to get it to be very taut on the drawing board while you're painting. And then I start working, usually in kind of building or revealing the image in layers. So quite often there'll be underpainting of some kind. The gilding quite often is at the end. For some illuminations, the gold has to be done earlier in the process because you need to paint up to it.
This connection of the way the ancient world, the medieval world, still informs us and brings beauty into the contemporary world is very much the linchpin of why I was fascinated with these as a curator.
Once the piece is finished, I again take digital images, write a description of what my thoughts are about the piece and some of the ideas that I had, and send that all to Donald.
This wrapping around 21st century technologies with this ancient way of writing is really a fascinating and crucial part of the whole story.
One of the things that, as a contemporary artist, makes it interesting and makes it irresistible almost, that the approach that they suggested was that we really consider a broad range of spiritual backgrounds and spiritual, cultural, scientific, that what's happening in the world as well as what historical facts or information we might be interested in are all potentially part of this, that limiting what we might choose, there really was no limit. I think each of us took that limiting and choosing as a personal responsibility. And I think when you get really good direction and the encouragement to do something new and different, it gives you just enough framework to have a foundation, and that foundation hopefully can also be a bit of a springboard, so that you really can go to a new place in your own work that you might not have chosen otherwise.
When we came to the book of Psalms, we asked Donald not to put pictures in them, because the book of Psalms is not a storyline. It's poetry meant to be sung, and it has a wide range of emotion, but there's no hero in the Psalms. No one gets it in the end. So what Donald did instead was to divide the book of Psalms into the traditional 5 sections, introduce each one with a Torah scroll device, and then he asked for a CD of the monks of St. John singing Gregorian chant. And he did a digital voice print, and he painted our voices singing the Psalms horizontally from page to page across the Psalms. And then, to remind us that Catholic monks do not have a monopoly on sacred song, he did a digital voice print of a Jewish men's choir singing the Psalms. He did digital voice prints of a Muslim call to prayer, Tibetan and Buddhist chants, Tibetan prayer bell, Native American chants, and he put them in horizontally in blue and red ink. And periodically, our chant and the chants of these other traditions will intersect as we move through the Psalms. And it's Donald's reminder to us that no matter where we start in our search for God, and we start from many different points, there are moments when we converge in our seeking God when we sing together.
A lot of these images, these references to scientific advances, or the translation of sound into marks on a page that graph the way we hear sound, or the molecular structure of a DNA strand, or images from the Hubble telescope. I mean, all of these things are, in the context of a Bible, are virtually provocative. They take away this emphasis on the text itself, and make people sort of realize the span of all creation. And that was a very deliberate part on St. John's, to go from the infinitesimal to the cosmos as a sort of a visualization of this idea of the power and sort of universality of creation, of God.
Suzanne Moore was asked to do a special treatment of a particular passage from the book of Deuteronomy. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life, so that you and your descendants may live, loving the Lord your God.
Those 2 words, choose life, are quite often used relative to pro-life movement in this country. And the thing that the CIT wanted to have me portray is that it's part of a much bigger message, and that is that we have choices about what we do with the gifts that we're given, the personal gifts, the gifts of the earth, the gifts that flow between human beings, and we have a choice between good and evil. And the clear message that they wanted to have me portray was that choosing life and living it to our fullest extent is really up to us, is that we choose not just life or death, for instance, or good or evil, but we choose the richness and the magnitude with which we're going to use what we've been given. I decided to find as many translations for blessings and choose life as I could find, and write them in the letter forms that they originated in as much as possible. So I did some research and found, I believe, about 38 different languages, translations for blessings and choose life, and made that the layer of texture that's underneath what you actually see in a more typographic rendition on the surface. And I had this idea that this tapestry of all of these different languages, all of these different cultures, and portraying that phrase with these various cultures was like weaving a tapestry. And if you look down the left-hand edge, there's another complete writing of the text, but it's in almost thread-like golden lettering. And then the top layer is done with rubber stamps that I had made of a very contemporary, early, but very contemporary sans serif typeface from 1930. And I had rubber stamps made of each of the letters of the alphabet, cut them up and mounted each letter, and stamped with paint one letter at a time, and then went back in and tried to get more depth in and around the letters so that it wasn't just a flat stamping, but it really started to weave in a third dimension. And I also am a believer that the best we can do is just go to the studio and approach the work every day with the best that we have. And that the decision about whether or not that's good or great comes not from, it can't come from us, and that can't be the primary goal. There's an aspect of the text and the image working together, the text and the image playing off of each other to provide the viewer with an experience that's different than purely visual or purely verbal experience of art.
In a traditional printed Bible, you have the same, say, 12-point Times Roman typeface from beginning to end. And so you don't have any sense of drama. With a printed Bible, it's the same text that describes the parting of the Red Sea and the minutiae of Jewish dietary law. Whereas with calligraphy, with the handwriting and with the manipulation of the handwriting, you can elicit all kinds of emotional response from the viewer. You can tell that some calligraphy is meant to be brass, some is meant to be string, some is meant to be quiet, some is meant to inflame a response from the reader. And along with that, the art does a similar sort of thing. The artist speaks to us in ways that we're not necessarily used to when it comes to religion.
The theologians, artists, and scribes who have spent a decade joyfully laboring on the St. John's
Like an antique. Those have already been made. The world doesn't need another one. But we do believe that the sacred needs to be expressed artistically in every generation. If you look at these pages, you'll discover it's a very contemporary style of art. It's not in-your-face contemporary. It's something that everyone can appreciate and approach and get something out of, because it will speak to them in ways they understand.
This project, which is described as a Bible for the 21st century, it's not a historical thing. It's a Bible that's supposed to live for the next millennium, to be an inspiration, to be a source of spiritual strength for the world.
The idea that this book is going to be used as part of the liturgy. And I think that role, even though only one person will be reading and turning the pages, I think that role of it being a book that's part of a working spiritual community. You know, that is important in a way that I'm not sure any of the other books that I work on would ever have that role.
It wasn't a very narrowly focused document, but it's a work of art for everyone.
We can't live without art, we can't live without music, and life would be terribly dull and impoverished without it. So that's probably the best reason to see this and to come and read these pages.
Thank you for joining us tonight on Full Focus, Western Washington's.
It's bad form not to show the credits or anything like that, but I'm not going to show the credits. You can find that video online. That is the same video that a small group of folks from St. Matthew's had viewed when we went to go and see the St. John's Bible on a field trip last October. There's actually a set, the 7-volume set at La Roche University in Pittsburgh. And so I'd commend that to you. And they love giving tours. They actually have classes that utilize the St. John's Bible in their programming and education. So just a couple of reflections. I know that this is my first lunch with books. I don't know if videos are normally a part of the program. This might have been a little bit longer. I do show it, or wanted to show it, because it really does capture so much of what went into the creation of this Bible. We had a docent training, and we were there all day covering a lot of that. And so I think that's the reason I wanted to show that to you. So it tells an extraordinary story. And so I want to spend a few minutes reflecting on why the St. John's Bible has captured the imagination of so many people around the world, and why it continues to matter today. The St. John's Bible has often been described as a Bible for the new millennium. That phrase is more than a slogan. It captures the project's central vision. The goal of the Bible, as we just heard at the end, is to ignite the spiritual imagination of people around the world. While I'm doing this, Mark, would you do me a favor? A number of the prints are up here, and if you could put one print at each table where somebody is sitting, that would be great. I think the smaller prints will best be utilized, and there's a few more on the top of the bigger prints also. Thank you. So feel free to take a look. That'll allow you all to see more images from the Bible itself. That's a mix of the Gospel Acts as well as throughout the entire volume. In the age of screens, instant communication, and endless information, the creators asked a simple but profound question. What would happen if a community once again created a handwritten Bible that would speak to the 21st century while remaining rooted in the ancient traditions of the Christian faith? And then the result was the first handwritten, illuminated Bible commissioned by a Benedictine monastery since the invention of the printing press more than 500 years ago. The project was commissioned by the monks of St. John's Abbey in Collegeville, Minnesota, and as we heard, entrusted to Donald Jackson. At the start of the project, he held the title Queen's Calligrapher. Jackson is widely regarded as one of the world's foremost calligraphers, and he even understood the enormous scale of the task before him. The completed Bible contains more than 1,100 pages written on calfskin vellum. When opened, the pages measure approximately 2 feet by 3 feet. Every letter was written by hand using quills, hand-ground pigments, traditional inks, and gold or platinum leaf. More than 160 major illuminations appear throughout the 7-volume Bible. That doesn't count the tiny little images that you can see along the margin. They call them marginalia. One of the most remarkable features of the St. John's Bible is its calligraphy. Jackson created a custom script specifically for this project. It was designed with elegance and, most importantly, a highly readable quality. This script that you will see exists nowhere else. Every page we'll see today bears witness to a style of writing created uniquely for this Bible. I think what is equally remarkable is that it was never a one-man project. While Donald Jackson served as artistic director and chief calligrapher, he assembled a team of artists, scribes, gilders, and assistants who worked with him over a period of about 15 years. The video that we just watched was done in 2008, I believe, and so it was right in the middle of putting ink to paper. Various sources associated with the project note that approximately 6 principal calligraphers and a team of artists and assistants contributed to the work over its duration. The Bible is therefore both an artistic and a communal achievement, reflecting the collaborative nature of the church itself. The St. John's Bible was also intentionally created to speak to our own time. Throughout its pages, contemporary images appear alongside ancient scripture. One can find references to modern astronomy, satellite photography, DNA imagery, and the AIDS virus through a microscope, as well as the events of September 11, 2001. At first glance, these inclusions might seem surprising, yet they express one of the project's central visions and convictions that God's story continues to intersect with our human history. The scriptures speak not only to ancient people, but also to modern lives, modern discoveries, modern joys, and modern tragedies. 3 major themes guided the artists through this project. The first was the role and significance of women within the biblical story. The second was the inclusion of those who live at the margins of society, the poor, the forgotten, the outsider, the stranger. The third was the conviction that faith and science are not enemies, but partners in humanity's search for truth. These themes appear again and again throughout the illuminations, often inviting viewers to notice details that they might otherwise overlook. And this brings us to one of the most important things to understand about the St. John's Bible. The illuminations are illuminations. They are not illustrations. Donald Jackson and the Benedictine community have repeatedly emphasized this point. The artwork is not simply depicting scenes from Scripture. Instead, each illumination serves as a visual meditation on the text. The images invite contemplation, conversation, prayer, and wonder. One description of the project explains the illuminations are spiritual meditations on Scripture. This reflects a deeply Benedictine approach to reading the Bible, one that encourages readers not merely to gather information, but to dwell on the text and allow it to shape one's life. The artwork often operates symbolically rather than literally. Gold leaf appears throughout the volumes as a sign of divine presence. Rainbows become reminders of God's covenant and faithfulness. Images of Christ move between representational and abstract forms. Scientific imagery is woven into biblical narratives. Layers of color and symbolism invite us to return again and again, discovering something new each time one looks at these images. They are well springs of faith formation. The St. John's Bible consists of 7 volumes, Gospel and Acts, the Pentateuch, Psalms, Prophets, wisdom books, historical books, and letters and Revelation. Together they represent more than a decade of artistic and spiritual labor. Recognizing that only one original manuscript could exist, Donald Jackson also supervised the creation of what's called the Heritage Edition, a limited edition of 299 full-size reproductions. And that's actually what we have today. Through extraordinary advances in printing technology, these editions faithfully reproduce the colors, textures, gilding, and beauty of that original manuscript, which can be seen at St. John's University, making it possible for institutions, churches, universities, and libraries to experience something remarkably close to the original. One thing worthy of sharing, the entire Bible, St. John's Bible, is digitized. And so if you have an internet connection, you can go to the St. John's Bible website and you can look at every single page from the beginning in the Pentateuch all the way to the final chapter of Revelation. So keep that in mind if you want to see any more of these images and the work. So use at St. Matthew's, we've had it for about 3 months. So we've occasionally used the St. John's Bible in worship itself, proclaiming the gospel from its pages. I think there's something powerful in hearing familiar words while seeing them presented with such beauty and care. The experience reminds us that Scripture is not merely information to be consumed, it is a sacred gift to be received. We've also used the St. John's Bible for spiritual formation. We had a Lenten series, 2 Lenten series. The first focused on what we entitled The Life of Jesus. Participants explored key moments in Jesus' life through the illuminations found within this Bible. His birth, ministry, teaching, his mission, his death, and resurrection. The artwork became a doorway into deeper engagement with our sacred scriptures. And then another series, we paired the St. John's Bible with a book by Archbishop Rowan Williams. The book is titled Being Christian. Using both text and image, participants reflected on the foundational practices of Christian life: baptism, the Bible, the Eucharist, and prayer. More broadly, St. John's University developed a curriculum known as Seeing the Word, which teaches people how to engage the illuminations through the practice of Visio Divina, or sacred seeing. Much like Lectio Divina invites prayerful reading of Scripture, Visio Divina invites prayerful attention to an image. Participants would move through stages of reflection, meditation, prayer, contemplation, and ultimately discern how they might live differently because of what they had seen with these images. St. Matthew's own Mark Harshman led a contemplative writing workshop just a few weeks ago using the practices of Lectio Divina and Visio Divina. Participants spent time prayerfully engaging both words and images before creating their own written reflections through the practice of ekphrastic writing, writing inspired by art. The St. John's Bible is a masterpiece of calligraphy, illumination, and craftsmanship. But its deepest purpose is not artistic admiration. Its purpose is spiritual transformation. It invites us to see the Word, and in seeing the Word, to see ourselves and our world differently as well. We've got about 16 minutes. So, I'm going to invite you all to come up and take a look. I would just remind you, please keep your drinks at your tables. And you can come up and take a look. It is right now on the page, the frontispiece of the Gospel of John. So in the beginning was the Word. There are other images up here as well. And so I would encourage folks to kind of cycle through just a little bit. And as you cycle, I will probably just throw out some tidbits of information as well. So, yes, ma'am.
If you have questions, are you ready for questions?
We can do some questions
Okay.
as people come up and look.
Yeah, if you have questions, raise your hand. I will come to you with the microphone. The reason why we need to use the microphone is because there are folks watching online who can only hear the questions if you ask through the mic. And also because we record these programs, and that way everybody that goes back and watches them can hear all the questions.
Josh, my question is, where is the original vellum copy of this illuminated Bible?
St. John's University in Minnesota.
Okay. We also had an online question. It is, did the Queen's calligrapher give a key sample to those working on the various pages what each letter should look like?
That is a good question, each letter. And so I think he developed the typeface as we heard in the video, and those samples certainly sent to calligraphers. I don't know much about calligraphy other than it's beautiful. And so my understanding would be that they would learn the calligraphy before they would put it to actual paper.
Thank you so much. Anybody else have a question?
While questions are being asked, feel free to come up and take a look. I think that's okay. I'm presenting, so I guess so, right?
I do have a question. So this is lovely. This is beautiful. It's very limited. Since they've digitized the whole thing, are there any plans to produce a work that could be distributed more generally? Could I get, so
I know what you're saying.
can there be a copy acquired by a different church?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a great question. So they made 299 copies of the Heritage Edition. Now, what they did after making the Heritage Edition and making all the replica pages, they smashed the presses so that they would never could make the Heritage Edition full-size replicas again. That said, one can acquire the 7-volume set. It's very expensive, and so usually there are churches that are well-resourced, institutions that are well-resourced, colleges, hospitals. There's some hospitals that have these. If somebody doesn't have $275,000 just sitting around, they do make what are sort of like a coffee table size version. You can get the entire 7-volume set in this size. And, you know, it's certainly not the care that went into this. You know, the gold and the silver that is in the replica, those are not actually gold or silver, but a high quality foil. These are simply digitized images put to paper of the entire thing. Absolutely. I got to actually put one that has, you know, the picture on it, though.
And you can get even smaller versions on Amazon.
Mark Harshman just said that you can get even smaller versions on Amazon.
I believe the 7-volume set of this size is about $600.
Josh, I have a related question. You had pointed us to a website where we could see all of the illuminations at our leisure. Is there a book that will give us some of the background of that particular piece? Because that is one of the things that when we have been able to view it at church, to have us have things explained, like the artist who did all of the different research to the different alphabets and, you know, from the different languages. If we were just to look at that, we wouldn't know what we were looking at.
So, yes, there are resources. There's a small library of resources that came to us to utilize with this season. We get to keep that. Those books are also, you can purchase them through your normal bookseller.
How would we know the title of your
The question was, how would we know the title?
They sell the same books on the St. John's Bible website.
And there would be a description?
Yes.
Okay, we'd like to use.
Very good.
Thank you. That was so informative. But there's a section that I wanted to question about where you spoke about where they did chats. And I noticed with all the different cultures, I didn't notice any representation from Africa when they mention like the Hispanic, and so I was wondering where I could research that and see why that was left out. You know, they had Native American, you know, so I was just wondering, is there a segment in there where that's, because the illustrations are breathtaking, and it's images of some people I saw of color.
Yep. So my response to that would be I would need to do a deeper dive in the resources that we have that explain how those particular books were handled. And I don't know personally myself. I will share, though, if you look at the Pentateuch, take a look at the second story of creation with Adam and Eve. That is where they do weave in African American history. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you. I wanted to know if there's any information available about how the original artistic representations were modified based on feedback, and kind of what the dialogue was like between the lead calligrapher and the artist.
My response to that is simply that because this was Donald Jackson's one of his great visions, that there simply was a lot of back and forth. Specific to those conversations, I'm not sure, but I think he really had his hand on it, and at the same time recognizing that there was the opportunity for artistic expression based on the artist's gifts. So there will be some contemporary illuminations, as well as more traditional ones that look like an icon or iconography. This volume does reflect those various artistic traditions.
Thank you.
If anybody, it was a question, it was quiet though. Anybody can take a picture of this. It's quite all right.
In response to the last question, one of the other videos that we showed was actually a BBC video, and there's a scene in it where Donald Jackson is meeting with the committee, and he says, you could see the tension in the room. I mean, it was creative tension, but it was tension nonetheless. And he says to the camera, an artist doesn't like to work with the benefactor. There's a you work with them, but there's certain tension. And he said, no artist really likes to work with a committee.
Thank you,
Thanks, Linda.
Linda is one of our docents for the St. John's Bible, and so anytime she wants to chime in to correct my comments, she's welcome to do so.
Anybody else have a question or a comment?
No.
On the page that is shown, it looks like script in the background. Is that what it is? Because my eyes aren't what they once were, and I couldn't tell, but even that is a beautiful rendition of something.
Absolutely. It is an artistic script in the illumination, John's prologue. Yeah. And I'm not exactly sure what the script is. I do believe it's reflective of whether or not it's maybe Aramaic or English. It does not look like English to me. But the resources we have would fully explain what the artist was trying to capture in this. And you could there are resources online as well that can help explain some of that too. That said, these images, we can always hear what the artist's interpretation was. At its heart for Visio Divina is really what it means to you when you see these particular images and illuminations, and how that is having an emotional effect on you as an individual looking at it.
Anybody else, any other questions or comments? All right, great, thank you.